Hello, everybody, and welcome to this week's Writers Chat. And this is the place writers like to gather, and we talk about all things writing for writers and by writers. And we are excited that you're with us either today live here. We got quite a few of you in the chat room or online here. And we hope we know a lot of you watch us by replay, so we do appreciate the replay watchers too. My name's Jean Wise. I'm one of the hosts here today, and I'm welcomed by our whole group today, but especially by my co-host Bethany Jett, who's going to lead us in a very interesting discussion. So if you're in the chat room, feel free to join us today, even visually if you want to. A lot of times we ask you guys to wait in the chat room and then come back on later, but we ask you to come on in if you want to, or participate, or later on if you want to, and participate in this week's discussion. We've got a good book plan to have to get into today. So Bethany, I'm going to turn it over to you and have you start our discussion today.
Okay. Yay! So I'm super excited. This is the book that we are going through today. It's called Jab, 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 Right Hook by Gary Vaynerchuk. So if you've got your copy, I want to see you. And in the chat, yay!
Mine's digital.
Digital copy.
That's good.
I'm going to have to take off my dust cover for this part. So for today, we're going to go through the chapters pretty much the way he has them outlined. So I thought we could just talk a little bit about chapters 1 and 2, which are the general, he's talking about like how to start with social, like kind of behavior strategies a little bit. And then he goes into the different platforms. And so the whole idea behind the book, Jab, 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 Right Hook, is that your social media or your marketing needs to be a give, 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 and then the ask. And so the ask is that right hook. So you give them a lot of free content, a lot of valuable content, and that's your little jabs. And then you come in with the swing at the end for the ask. And by the time that you do that, you get like the knockout or whatever, because you've done so much on the other side with the giving, that the ask is just a common sense response kind of for the person, because you've given so much to them that it's a no-brainer for them to do whatever the ask is.
And just even the title reminds you of that, doesn't it? Because I kept calling it jab, jab, right hook, but there are 3 jabs in there. And I think that was when I finally realized there were 3 jabs, it just kind of reminded me, yeah, we overgive before you come into that sale. So just even the title alone stuck with me.
And he even says too, like it might be 70 jabs before that right hook, you land that right hook. So anyway, I want this to be like super open discussion. So I know like people in the chat have read it. And so let's just go in, I guess, through the first couple of chapters. If anyone's got anything underlined or that they thought was really pertinent to writing or to their platform, that would be awesome. Round 1, the setup is the first chapter.
Yeah. First chapter?
Yep.
Round 1 he calls it, huh? The setup?
Round 1, the setup.
What struck you in that one, Bethany?
Oh my gosh, I've got underlines on so many pages. On page 6, he talks about repurposing content, which is something that we all talk about as writers. But the one thing for social, he says on the left-hand column, he says you can't repurpose old material created for one platform, throw it up on the other, and then be surprised when everyone yawns in your face. He really talks about how each social media platform is different and that you can repurpose content, but you have to tweak it for the different platforms. And we talked about this before on Writers Chat, where, you having something put on Twitter and then having it auto shove over to Facebook, it looks weird and your audience doesn't take it the same way. And like even recently, I had my Instagram pushing to Facebook because I didn't realize it was triggered. And so I was going back into Facebook and deleting like the hashtags, the dots that I'm putting in there to break up the white space. And even looking at my Facebook, it looks so foreign. And, I'm not surprised nobody was like really responding to it, because it looked like I didn't care enough about Facebook to actually give them content. It looked like I was just shoving it over there for them, like second fiddle almost is how it felt when I was looking at it.
Hi, Elaine. People are pretty smart, getting much more savvy when it comes to social media anymore. Don't you think on that?
Yeah.
I think the quote that jumped out at me was just about right hooks. It's on page 14, about today's perfect right hook is a call to action that's simple and easy understood. Sometimes we just bury those call to actions when we just want them to come over and like the page. It should stay simple. And that they are crafted for mobile. We have got to remember, we have got to take the time to look at what our sites look like on these little mobile things anymore. We've just got to on that. What is the statistic, Bethany? And you might know this. It's huge. It's 60-70% on a lot of these social media things that people view mobile.
I know for Facebook, as of a few months ago, the most recent numbers I had, they said that there's like 2.4 billion people who are daily on Facebook, and 2.1 billion of that is mobile.
Mobile. So you've got to be
insane.
Yeah.
That's like high 90%. Jan, you had a question, and you put in the chat too about schedulers.
Yes. If you have to have different things on the different sites, what good is a scheduler then if you write one post and send it out?
So on my scheduler, I can tweak content for Facebook or Twitter or even LinkedIn a little bit, not necessarily for Instagram. So the sun's going behind the clouds, so I'm like darkening and lighting in here. So what I mean by that is, if I write a caption on Instagram, for example, and I have the 30 hashtags or whatever, to get the white space, I have like periods going down the line so that I create paragraphs in there. If I have that auto post over to Facebook, then on Facebook, all those dots and hashtags end up in the status where the photo is. And so instead of doing that, I need to take that same paragraph that I wrote Instagram, get rid of the dots, and maybe reword a couple of lines of that status for Facebook, because people on Facebook, it's a little bit more personal sometimes than Instagram. Instagram can be a little bit captionier. So depending on what the post is or the caption. And then for Twitter, I might take that same 2 or 3 sentences, shorten it a little bit, add 2 hashtags instead of the 3, or maybe put a hashtag in the actual line of the text and add a GIF. So like I'll take that same content, but I'll just redo it slightly for the different social media platforms. And I do that in my scheduler. So you can have one piece of content and you just say, okay, on LinkedIn, I'm going to put a couple of businessier lines at the top with the link. So really you're taking that same content, but it doesn't look the same across all of them. Because you can tell when something's a Twitter. Sometimes you can tell when it's a tweet on Facebook. It looks off.
Yeah.
So I thought you're doing each social media separately on the scheduler. You're not just pushing it out to everybody all at one time.
Sometimes I can get a LinkedIn and Facebook to be the same, because sometimes the audience will read the same way. So I don't always change my LinkedIn and Facebook ones, but Twitter I will, and that's the one I don't use. It won't do. Mine doesn't do Instagram. So I'll just copy and paste into my notes app on my phone and shorten it or make it a little bit more casual, I guess, for my Instagram anyway. Kind of depends on the feel, but yeah, Facebook and LinkedIn are from my brand are pretty similar, so I don't have to do a lot of touching with that.
Thank you, I appreciate that. Yeah. I just thought we were supposed to send it the same thing out to everybody I thought that's what the scheduler was for.
It's a way to get like content going out for you without you having to be in the moment, which I think is great, because then it frees you up to be in the moment of it. But it does take a little bit of time just to tweak it, and I like that he said that in the beginning, because they are different. Like they're like your children, you have more than one child, they're different personalities. I feel like that's how social media platforms are too.
Bethany, you mentioned GIFs, and that is a really hot thing, it seems like right now on a lot
of them. There's
certain social medias that are more open to GIFs, and where do you find such neat GIFs?
Okay, so there's like, I think it's Giphy, G-I-P-H-Y. There's a dot in there somewhere. I like to find them there because you can embed them in emails. So depending on who you're emailing, you might be able to send them one. Facebook now has it to where you can post, when you're posting comments and statuses, that you can use GIF or GIF. It's a hot debate on how you say it.
How you pronounce it.
Yeah. I say GIF like Jif peanut butter. And even though it's spelled differently. So on Facebook, what I have found is a super fun way to get a lot of engagement, especially on my personal page, sometimes on the business page, is asking people to respond in a GIF. And so like, how is your day going? Respond in a GIF. Well, that's super fun. And then you can sometimes those will get tons of comments and engagement, and you'll be able to, talk back to people who maybe you haven't talked to in a while just because they you know, you can do fun things like that. Like, you know, how does it feel like when you're on a deadline? I mean, those are things that are like, you can bring in things that you're doing very naturally. That's a jab, actually. Like if you've got a book coming out, you know, just turn the book into the publisher. How do you feel when you get done with something? So now you've given them information about a book, but now you're asking them to tell you something, you know, respond in a GIF. So that's a jab. Because the right hook then later is, hey, on release day, buy the book. That's what you're going to do, but you're sprinkling that in a little bit. Twitter is super fun for GIFs too.
Okay.
Instagram there's different third-party apps where you can do like video, which is kind of what a GIF. Don't get too technical on me here. It's a little. It's not necessarily a video, but there's different third-party apps you could use to like put like a little GIF on your feed. I haven't done that, but
I've not done a lot with those, so that's something I
oh, you can do them in your stories.
Yeah, I need to do more.
Yeah, they're fun in the stories. I wish that they would connect to the main bank of GIFs, but they're super fun. And it adds just a little, you know, extra to your story and things.
And humor is always good. Humor is always a good selling point. I think. Well, should we go on the next chapter?
Yeah. And he talks about that somewhere too. It may be I've read all of his books, so I don't know where he talks about it, but he does say like people go on social to escape. It's a form of escapism. So if you can entertain, then, you know, that's always a good thing. My Instagram's doing a lot better now that I'm doing more memes, and, you know, I'm watching that. So anyway, yeah, chapter 2. It's called The Characteristics of Great Content and Compelling Stories. And he's all about storytelling. And that's what I really liked about this book as a writer. It was just full of ideas on how to tell story through social. And for people who have a hard time with social media, if you think about it as a way to storytell, that might change perspective maybe.
There was a lot in this chapter, I thought. It's just back to like your original thing, the quote on page 17, that content is king, but the context is God. Now as Christians, we took it, but anyway, but you can put out great content, but if it ignores the context of the platform on which it appears, it can still fall flat. And that's sort of what you said, be aware of what you're doing that on. I just think that was one of the key takeaways I had for that chapter, that what does it fit the social media platform we're trying to get the message out of.
He calls it native. And on page 17 too, on the right-hand side, he said, what's native to the platform, which is what we were just talking about. And then he says, Tumblr attracts the artsy crowd and supports the GIFs, the short rolling loops of video. So that like, if you love the GIFs, then Tumblr would work there. And what I'm excited about as we go through this book is that he goes, so if you're thinking like, why do I need this book? So far, I'm not convinced. Well, he goes through different social media platforms and pulls ads or posts and tells you what they did right, what they did wrong, and how they could do it better, or what made it stellar. And I found that so helpful as I create my own content now, thinking about the rules, the quote unquote rules about what makes great content for each platform. So
you're right. He says in this chapter too, don't make demands. That's that right hook, like come over and do this. But he doesn't say don't make demands often. So that goes back to the title, the jab, jab, jab and stuff. He says on page 22, be generous, be informative, be funny, be inspiring, be all the characteristics we enjoy in other human beings. That's what the jabs are all about. Right hooks represent what's valuable to you, to us individually, getting the sale, getting the people out in the door, but jabs are about what is valuable to the customer. And I think that's a really neat way to look at it. And I got excited reading this.
I like that too. And I'm excited. We'll try to show as many images as we can as we're going through. On page 18, he says, smart native social media tries to enhance the customer's interaction with the platform, not distract him with it. And I liked that. Because so many times, like, we're trying to get this balance of driving people to our website or sign up for an email list. Well, those I think are right hooks. And so if those are interspersed, that's one thing. But if we're trying to get them to engage with us as a brand or as the author or whatever it is we're doing, then we look at social media a lot differently.
Yeah. And I'm wondering if we would get, let's just use Facebook, who there's a natural limitation the way they have the algorithms now of who all sees our posts. But if we get, it is supposed to be a social media. You know, we're supposed to be social, not selling things. So if we are social, we get conversation going, we get the likes because we are entertaining and informative and inspirational, then we're going to get more viewers. The medium will like us too, you know, we'll get more viewers when time it comes for that right hook, you know. So it's working together with the system.
He recently said that because, you know, I heard him on one of his podcasts say that people are complaining about the algorithm change with Facebook that happened a little bit ago, and Instagram also has an algorithm change. And he said the good thing about that is people are only interacting, they're only seeing your content if they interact with you. He's like, so if I had to start over today, I'd be posting 4 to 6 times on those platforms, because the only people who are seeing it are the ones who are already, by their actions, shown that they want to interact with you. So you can't over spam them because of the algorithm. I just liked how he took a positive spin on that whole thing, and then almost gave you permission, because like people I think were afraid to post, but then your engagement number percentages go down because you're only posting once and like 2 people see it. Well, if you're not afraid then to go ahead and test the content, trying to see what's going to resonate with your audience, this is the perfect time to do that, which is why I'm still on Facebook pages and encouraging people to do that. I think this is a good time to test what your audience actually wants.
Right. And I liked what he said in this chapter about it leverages pop culture. We have sometimes not to, at least I have a tendency, let's put it this way, not to always see what's going on in the hot new television show and bring that in as a way to connect with my audience. I don't know. It's new seasons this week on TV. You know, a lot of the new shows are coming out. There'd be one of them will take off. I'm like, what was it last year? This Is Us or something like that. Took off last year. And could that relate to a book that you've written, that you could make comment? That's going to be a possible audience. You know, we've got to be aware of that. Or what's hot being advertised on the ads? You know, what's the most, you know, Taco Tuesday. That's old now, but you know, the idea of that. You know, what could we do more with that?
I remember. Oh, go ahead, Rhonda. Go ahead.
I'll tell you what I found encouraging was his emphasis on storytelling. And in my little brain, I'm looking for encouragement, and I'm thinking, okay, writers then have an edge. If it's about great storytelling, you know, TV shows have writers, movies have writers. You know, sports people aren't necessarily great writers, and they probably hire writers to do their social media. But as a writer, if it's about storytelling, then I'm on track. And I know that I can tell a good story. And thinking about it as writing and not as a chore, as like a writing prompt for today, is a lot more exciting than thinking, oh boy, I have to get on my Facebook page today and make some kind of a post, blah, blah, blah. So I found that really encouraging.
I like that. And Leslie just said Manifest was an awesome show last night for inspirational fiction. Like Twitter would be an amazing platform to talk about that, because Twitter's really like conversational. And so people watch and like live tweet shows and sporting events and things like that. So I wonder like if people are using a hashtag or something over there, that's a way to get followers too, is by adding value to adding value to the conversation and relating it to inspirational fiction. You could probably pull in some writers and fans of that show, like just with some things that you saw in there.
Yeah, and it brings in the storytelling aspect. Rhonda was saying, because you could comment on that. Boy, this show's well written because I noticed this, and this, and all of a sudden you're the expert observing something. You know, so that's.
I love that was encouraging, and you're right. Like Rhonda, it's storytelling, and we're learning how to do that in books. Now we just have to do it in short form, in microform.
Microform, and he does say that in this chapter
on page 25.
He said, stop thinking about your content as content. Think about it rather as micro content. Tiny, unique nuggets of information, humor, commentary, or inspiration that you reimagine every day, even every hour, as you respond to today's culture, conversations, and current events. We could take the lens, whatever our niche is, and see whatever's going on in the world through that lens. And most of that would be our Christian lens, and hopefully bring a positive or a hope or some understanding how we can see this, I just think it's great.
I do.
Along that vein, I liked what he had to say about the native storytelling. It doesn't require you to alter your identity for that given platform. The different platforms allow you to highlight the different aspects of your identity or your brand. And so that it really is thinking outside the box within the realm of your platform. How can it apply in each different scenario or platform?
Yeah,
I love that.
I do too. And just think if we had done that, how that would appeal to an agent or an editor too, because it's better marketing and it's wider appeal maybe. I don't know. It's got a win-win on all sides.
It
looks like you got something ready to. Bethany, yeah.
Yes. Okay, so one illustration that he talks about a lot in this book, and he also brings it up, I think, in the Crushing It book, which is his latest one. So I do want to go ahead and just pitch his latest book called Crushing It, where he also goes through social media platforms with an update. So like Jab, 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 Right Hook is amazing. This is a different book, but it's just released. It should be on our list to do at some point, actually.
Okay, we'll put it on the list.
He talks about on page 25 in Jab, 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 Right Hook, he talks about how, like, just what you were saying about culture. So during the 2013 Super Bowl, they had a power outage. And so whoever was running the Oreo cookie social media on Twitter, they posted power out, no problem. And then they had a photo of a lone Oreo cookie waiting in the dark with text that said, you can still dunk in the dark. So it was like the hit of it just took off. And he talks about how he goes into details more about like why it aligned perfectly with Oreo's identity, because they dunk in the dark. That was really cute. But then it was playful. It's the cookie that you want to watch football with, basically. He talks about it as being a genius piece of advertising on the fly. And so like we don't have, like, if you don't watch football, then don't watch the Super Bowl. You know what I mean? But I might be sitting near the Super Bowl just kind of like maybe live tweeting or seeing what people are doing like as you're working. But for my audience, 2-3 Thanksgivings ago, it was the Gilmore Girls when they redid that whole new reunion show. And it wasn't a show that I had watched, but my audience was talking about it everywhere. I saw it everywhere. So I went ahead and started watching it and was able to start pulling in conversation that way because of what his advice on look at what your audience is doing and talk about it. And so I was able to ask them just questions like, did you watch the new one? Did you like it? Did you whatever? And it was native and natural. And I think it helped to be a little bit relatable too. Like I knew what was happening with my audience,
Yeah.
because I was just paying attention to what they were talking about. And he does that all the time.
And writers are people that pay attention a lot of times and observe. So we have the skill. That's another skill for us, Rhonda. We have the skill that we can bring to this kind of marketing. Leslie has a question in the chat, Bethany, about there is so much going on in the world today that can relate to her stories. How do you just pick one to attack on social media? Do you have to focus on what relates to the book you're currently writing? Like she has 2 novels, but they focus on 2 different things. Do you have any way to how to sift through all that's going on?
I think it's hard when you've got multiple things, and we all do. I think it depends. So like right now, my focus is a lot on the mom audience because I've got a mom book coming out. But then I'm also doing other pieces of content otherwhere to see what hits with other things. So I would be, if you've got these books coming out, I would go a little heavier probably on those topics in whatever platform is going to be native to that. And which I know is very general. I will quote him right here though, because this might work. On page 27, he says, jab at people all the time, every day. Talk about what they're talking about. When they start talking about something different, talk about that instead. So if no one is talking about what you're writing, then I would try to find where they're talking about what you're writing and then talk about it over there. And if that's not on Instagram, then I would see what is your audience talking about on Instagram and talk about that. So I think he's kind of saying, don't force the conversation on your platform. Find out where the conversation is being held. Talk about it there. And then when the conversation changes, change with it. It sounds like is the advice instead of forcing conversation maybe where it's not native. So I don't know if that was helpful or just more confusing.
Yeah, she said it made some a little bit of discernment, knowing your audience and discerning where to focus, because we couldn't begin to focus on everything that's going on. I mean, all the different news.
It sounds to me like surfing. You know, if you're a surfer, you go where the waves are and you ride the wave until it's gone, and then you find another wave. And if there's no wave action where you are, you go somewhere else. And that just came to my mind as maybe the kind of strategy we need to look at.
Yeah.
And Twitter tells you what's trending all the time on the side. So, and that's based on what your audience is talking about too. So if you go to Twitter, you can just see, are there any hashtags that are trending right now that have to do with anything that you could pull in? And that's when I'll jump in live sometimes, is if Motivation Monday, that's one that you could do like every week. But if there's inspirational fiction, there's Inspi Thick hashtags. And so they probably have their own things that they're talking about in there too. And you can pull in some stuff there.
That's good. And I forgot about the hashtags. You could always have, a certain hashtag would narrow it down too, wouldn't it? On what you picked it. Yeah. And everybody likes your analogy, Rhonda.
Oh, that's great.
Great way.
I did have while I have I just want to ask you a very personal question, Bethany.
Yeah.
How much time a day do you spend on social media?
I don't really know, because I break it up all throughout my day. So like, I don't really sit down and block social media. It's just become 5 minutes here, 10 minutes here, breaks in between the things that I do. So if someone asked me this at the conference, and I was like, I really don't know. I probably spend 2 or 3 hours when you total it up, but it's broken up into breaks. So it doesn't like I said, it's 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 5 minutes. Posting on Instagram, that could take 2 or 3 minutes, and I might scroll in there for a little while. And might go to, like last night, I was doing taxes, so I took a break with Twitter. So social becomes my break. So I got on Twitter just to kind of let my brain, whatever. And I started just seeing, I started looking for hashtag mom life, hashtag homeschool, seeing like some people, if they're interesting people I could follow. So I have got 5 new followers in 10 minutes. But I was following them too. And so kind of like that. It's kind of like my husband's in CrossFit. And so he's making us do these things like rounds. And I was like, I hate this so much. But by the time you're done, you just did 45 squats. I couldn't have done it all at once. But because I was breaking it up in the round, it didn't feel like so much. And that's how my day is. It's become just a natural part of my day. But I had to teach myself how to do that. I didn't intend to become that person, but I think it's an easier way to live.
Yes. Jan mentioned that Edie Melson recommends 30 minutes a day. It's just...
I don't know that I could do social media in 30 minutes. I have to, not only do I have to schedule, but then if I'm only blocking off 30 minutes, then I lose the rest of my day to be engaging with people and interacting with people and being live with people. And here's the thing, I think it's a slower return on investment when you spend the time to do that, but I think that's what pays off. And I think he talks about that too, is spending the time. So I don't want to miss things that are happening throughout the day because I'm only doing it in the morning. I couldn't do it in 30 minutes a day. It's probably 2-3 hours for me total.
So do you think every day is the best strategy? Then
it's probably the best strategy. I can't do it every day though. I probably got tons of notifications on Facebook because I was working on my final and then doing my taxes overnight. So I've been radio silent. so now I have to go back and help, deal with that. And people feel ignored when you aren't, when you don't answer them right away and stuff like that. So I try to make sure I'm touching on at least all of them at least once. And mobile makes that really easy. But so because I missed 2 days, then I'll probably spend a lot more time here. And I don't really do it daily. I like to think of my time in week. How much can I get done this week on social, not the day? And so some days it might be 2 days of not being on at all because I didn't want to get sucked into a conversation when I had to work on taxes in my final. But I'll make up for it this week by being probably a little over in some areas.
Right. There's got to be some sort of boundaries on it, or somebody used the term drowning in social media. I think that's true. We would drown on that. So, we just got to find what works best for us and probably what our audience wants too. Because there's probably certain feedback.
That's what I was wondering about, because my audience is probably the 20-something crowd. And I watched my husband, who tends to be on the bleeding edge of technology, and my kids who are way into gaming and stuff like that. And what do you think about Twitch? My husband just watches these streams, and people watch people play video games for hours.
My kids do that.
It's insane. But it seems there's just a lot. And some people will just play this stupid marbles game. They'll pay $1 and subscribe to watch a random generator marble game. And then you do that all night long. And if your audience is younger, how do you tap into that when you're not as young as they are?
I think it's just, I got a little boy coming in. I think it's talking about what they're talking about. Like, if, like my kids love video games and all that. So like I might, if I was going after like the little boy market, which I know that sounds weird, but I've got 3 little boys. All of my social media right now would be Fortnite, Minecraft, and more Fortnite, because that's all they're talking about. Yeah. Hey, hi. If you could play Fortnite all day long, every day, it would be like heaven. So if I was going after the teen market, especially boys, that's all I'd be talking about right now. So I think it's just what are they talking about? And then you talk about it too, because your age doesn't really matter if you're making valid conversation about the topics that they're talking about. Okay, I'm going to mute just real quick because I think I've got a little problem.
Oh, you go ahead and mute. I'm going to move on a little bit to the next chapter. How's that? We'll keep us moving into the Facebook chapter. Okay, and I'll tell you what I like, and then hopefully Bethany will be back by then. The one thing I liked about this is the example he gave about jabs in action, and this is found on page 34 if you're following along. He talks about a boot company and that hopped on the bandwagon of 30 Rock. So there's a current trend. And he said 30 Rock was going off the air. And he basically said, I'm on page 34, Bethany. He basically said, so long, 30 Rock. Thanks for 7 hilarious years. Now, what's that got to do with a boot company? It just totally off on that. But then they came along. I'm trying to find the next one. They asked a question. Well, what's your favorite TV show now? They were not only getting conversation going, they were gaining what their customers like at the same time. So they knew their customers liked 30 Rock because they had asked that question. So that when they purposely said goodbye 30 Rock, they knew that was a segment of their customers. Kind of back to Sophia's idea of young people. She knew those people would like those game shows. So that was a jab. It was not selling anything. He said, all of a sudden your brand was talking like a human being, not a boot company. So then they put out a video showing people showing off their boots. Then they put out, it wasn't selling anything. Then they put out a Valentine's Day card that didn't show a single boot. The third jab was a 15-second video about rock climbing, something totally different, but they knew it was part of their audience interest. Then there was a poll. Would you rather wear your boots in summer or winter? See how it's just a hint of what they were doing. It was give, entertain, make them feel like you like each other, and then they jabbed with a commercial on boots. I thought that was interesting. I wouldn't have thought some of this, to me, kind of almost a trivia light stuff would add up to make a better right hook. But according to good old Gary V here, it does, So I don't know if comments on that or whatever made me interested in their boots.
I know. I thought it was great.
It was a great illustration on that. Target your jabs and your right hooks is kind of what he was saying in here. The other thing I liked about this chapter, and I guess I didn't realize this till I got back into this, is there's page after page after page of examples where he analyzes what works and what doesn't work about this. For example, in this chapter, it's all on Facebook. So you really kind of learn. I mean, there's page after page. There's multiple pages of examples here of what works and what doesn't work.
Yeah, I think about this ad all the time. I read this book a couple years ago, this ad for Jeep. The only thing he said he wished had been different is if they had put the Jeep logo right here, because if the image gets shared, doesn't have anything to do with Jeep, but it captures everything about their brand and the story they're telling with it. And it was actually
hair's blowing in her face, and she's
blowing in her face.
laughing, and she's moving, and it's fun.
And their caption was, "It's a Jeep thing." And like, you totally get it. So he said that the only thing is he wished that they had watermarked the photo. And then the other one I think about a lot, that's on page 47. And then on page 45, he talks about Air Canada. This is an example of a negative or a bad way that they did this post when they were honoring, I'm trying to see if that like is coming up. They're honoring her for her time as an employee. Oh, she was their first ever flight attendant and she had passed away. That's what it was. So they have a lot of text. He said it's not visually compelling. It's just her headshot, too much text. And there's a link when it should have been a picture post. And he said this is what would have made it a lot better. If they had put the caption on her photo, made it the star, took away that extra bulk text, and then that, which is one reason why sometimes sharing on, like, if you share on Facebook, sometimes you'll get like this pop up. Sometimes it's better to go ahead and just post it twice. Like if you're running 2 pages, like for Serious Writer, sometimes we share, but sometimes it's like you need to go to the North Carolina page, you need to go to the Serious Writer page. So each one looks native to itself, so it doesn't have all that extra copy down there. Yeah, the Facebook one is like, I was going through it several times actually on how he was talking about the storytelling on Facebook.
It's worth the book alone just to have it almost as a study, a case study on what works and what doesn't work on each of these platforms.
Yeah.
Very strong on that way. We had a question on hashtags, Bethany, in the chat room. Leslie wanted to know, she tried to create a following, tried to create some trends with her hashtags on that. But how long does it take, do you think you could create a big following with a new topic? Let's say we wanted to start hashtag North Carolina Christian Writers Conference, is there tips on creating that following that way?
I think it takes a lot of time, and a lot of times I think people aren't willing to put the time in to do that. I think you need to start slipping in your hashtag with the hashtags that are already being used until you grow the audience to the point where they want to use yours. Like there's one of the girls on Instagram, her hashtag is say gets fit, which I was like, what does that even mean? But she uses it on everything and it's in her bio and it's her nickname. And so she has like that hundreds of thousands of people on her Instagram now. So she grew it that big. People now use that hashtag so that she will notice the hashtag and sometimes repurpose content from that. So like if you ask them to use a specific hashtag so that you can feature them, sometimes that's a way to get people used to using it. But that was her first hashtag on every single post for a very long time, and it might still be. And so that not only does that brand her, did over a long period of time, but then also she can just click that hashtag and see all her posts. And now people can follow hashtags, which a year ago they couldn't. And so like when you follow a hashtag, people's posts that you're not following will show up in your feed and also in your stories. So like I might have like 100 people see a story and then it jumped, like the other day it jumped to 274 on only one story because I use the hashtag workspace, which is a popular one that people follow. And so like I had almost like 2 times, I don't know, the amount of people see that one story because of the hashtag. And so if I was going to try to do a branded hashtag, I might have stuck my hashtag right next to it, but it's going to take time. You got to build the audience enough where they want to interact to actually use your hashtag. So I will start using other people's hashtags, the ones that are currently popular.
Is there find popular hashtags? I know we've talked about this.
Yeah. There's lists, like you can Google lists, but I think the best research is to actually go into Instagram, and you can do this on your computer. If I like to use my computer over mobile when I can, if I'm doing especially research, because I can type faster. So you can go to Instagram.com, and then in the search bar at the very top, hashtag, make it a very generic term, like fiction. I don't know. And then look at the top posts that pop up on Instagram are going to be the people who have the most engagement. And it's always going to be changing. And then underneath of that are going to be the most recent people who have used the hashtag. So open up a photo that looks like normal, not like a weird photo, and see what hashtags they're using. And so then I'll just copy and paste clumps of hashtags out of Instagram into like a notes or a document. And then I started looking for groupings. And then if I find one that's a little weird, or maybe not weird, but like a little different, something I wouldn't have thought of, I'll click that and I'll do the same thing. I'll look at the top ones that are getting the most engagement. Is this have to do with the topic? And then start looking at the hashtags they're using as well. Because then you'll start going down this rabbit trail. Well, you'll get 10 to 20 to maybe even 30 very targeted hashtags that your audience is using that you would never even know existed, because they sometimes are initials or they're words that, like motherhood rising is one for moms. I never would have come up with that. Hashtag let them be little is another one. Like mom life, that's where I would start, hashtag mom life. But a lot of them are using these other little strange ones that I never would have thought of. But those are the ones that they're following because that's their culture. And so I do groupings like books, hashtag bookstagram. What are they using? Genres, whatever genre you're writing, you should be using hashtags. And then seeing what content the people who are following your genre of book are liking, and start creating content that's similar to that, and engaging them in the conversation that way too.
Okay, now I'm going to play dumb here right now. This gets so overwhelming, you guys. I don't know about the rest of you guys. My head's going bong, bong, bong. What platforms work best with hashtags? Instagram, Twitter.
Yep,
Pinterest.
I just heard something a couple years ago. I heard that hashtags were like not good on Pinterest, but I just read something recently that said a few of them actually are. So I'm going to start using hashtags in mine again.
Okay, so those are the three.
Yeah. Now on Facebook and LinkedIn, if you're doing like, on Facebook, it's really good if you're like trying to follow a conference, like for writers' conferences, for example, if you're wanting to see all the pictures that people are taking or the comments about them, it's a way to like find information that way. And LinkedIn too. And sometimes people use them as an aside, like hashtag sorry, not sorry. Like that's just funny. So sometimes that's good too. But people I don't know are really searching Facebook with hashtags unless they're looking for something specific.
Okay.
That's my opinion. I could be wrong about that.
Right. Well, we better get back to the book because we only got about 15 minutes before we wrap up here. But the one thing I did like about this book, so if you haven't purchased this book, I'll tell you something else, is at the end of each chapter on each platform, and we'll have Bethany kind of highlight maybe some of the platforms next, is a really neat summary at the end that says basically questions to ask when creating whatever the platform is. This one's on Facebook. Micro content. Things like, is the text too long? And remember the example Bethany showed with the text too long? Is it entertaining, surprising? Is the photo striking and in high quality? Is the logo visible? Remember he loved that Jeep one, but didn't see the logo on that. Have we chosen the right format for the post? After each chapter, there's this really convenient little checklist that summarizes all the stuff he's trying to teach us on these wonderful examples in the book. So this is going to be a reference book for a long time. I think it could be dated. Like you said, there's some updates in his Crushing It book, but still it's a wonderful resource, I thought. So we have many other platforms. Do you want to jump ahead and highlight a few of those? What's in the rest of the book in the 15 minutes we have left? Here, Bethany, I'm going to turn it over to you and have you jump a little bit here.
The last thing on Facebook I wanted to say was on page 71. He talks about don't assume your audience is stupid. They know what a link is. And so he talks about this one very famous bakery that puts with link in the text caption of their thing. He's like, your audience knows to click on a blue link. So I think about that all the time too. Insufficient page management was another one for Facebook. And then another thing he talks about is time. So another reason, like, here's what we need to remember is posting something at 6 a.m. means Eastern anyway. That's 3 a.m. Pacific. And then worldwide, that's a whole different thing. Instagram, 80% of people on Instagram are not in America. We represent 20%. That's like a new stat. Like it's been like, that's current. So 80% of the people on Instagram are not in America. So if we're only spending the morning getting on Instagram, you've just missed this huge, wouldn't you like your book to go international? Like, wouldn't that be amazing? So like we have to be like thinking about time zones as well. Like even when you're using a scheduler, let it work for you when you're sleeping on Twitter. Like have stuff be going out, you know, when you're sleeping, so that the people who aren't in America are actually getting the content when they're getting up necessarily. All right. So we want to look at Twitter.
I'm not going to start tweeting at 3 a.m. in the morning.
No, you don't have to. Let your scheduler do it.
Okay.
Unless you're up.
Unless I'm up, but sometimes I've been known to play with my phone in the middle of the night. Yes.
Let's see. He says on page 85, if Facebook's main currency is friendship, Twitter's is news and information. And like a lot of people get their news from Twitter.
Yeah.
And that's not going away. I mean, sometimes I get my news from Twitter, like, you know, when things happen. Anyone got anything? I've got like so much in here. So if anyone got anything on Twitter that they super liked, or so I could talk about Twitter for a while.
Just highlight a few things. Go ahead, Melissa. What?
Yeah, I liked what he said about trend jacking with Twitter's trends. You use the trends, and we talked about that with other topics too, that you're just looking for what is popular and how you can apply your platform to that.
I don't know what's trending today.
Hashtags and trends are one of the biggest things with Twitter.
Yeah.
One thing he says on page 93, which I found to be very encouraging, was being cool has nothing to do with age. It has to do with how solid your identity is. And he talks about being true in your voice, especially on Twitter. So like he also says that Twitter's natural tone is ironic, but if that's not natural to the way that you write, then don't try to be ironic, because then it'll come out wrong. And then that makes you look weird, especially up there. But one thing he talks about in here and on his podcast quite a bit, and his keynotes, is that especially us as writers, because we are like our brand and our business, we have an advantage over big companies who are unwilling to let their PR people actually engage with the social media platforms the way they're supposed to be, because they're afraid of like fallout or that something's going to go wrong. They don't trust it, whatever. And he talks about that on page 94. He, as a small business, which is what we are as authors, you can gain an edge over larger companies when it comes to being nimble and authentic to imperatives to successful Twitter marketing. And so because we have full control over what we're pushing out about our brand, then we get to be on trend and on topic with what's happening right away. We don't have to get permission for our stuff. And so that's, you know, even though these big companies are there, they, you know, don't necessarily have all the, you know, are able to do what we do. Wendy's is an amazing Twitter feed. Whoever runs their Twitter is hilarious. Yeah, they're super sarcastic and super funny. And so like that, so it's really just given Wendy's this culture, I guess, especially on Twitter. I mean, they'll like, if Burger King tweets at them or McDonald's tweets at them, they just like, they'll fire a zinger right back, or, you know, they're really funny. So I encourage you to just check out Wendy's, the company.
Yes, that.
Super funny.
Yes.
They do a good job.
Right.
The next story on 94, scaling the unscalable, the Green Mountain coffee roasters. I thought that was an interesting story.
What did you like about it so much? I got to read in real quick. Gotta look it up again.
Just something totally opposite of what you're working with. And then it just kind of pulled somebody the man that was helping to make the, let's see, what is it? The campaign, connected with the person doing the tweet. And it just kind of, kept going from there. So it's like, you never know who's looking at your post. It could end up connecting you with something else that could expand your horizon.
Yeah. It might go back to being human. You know,
right.
That even on the Facebook thing, that all of a sudden this company was a human face. It wasn't just a company.
Right.
Somebody that you had a conversation with. And isn't that authentic or real, or, which is what we want. It's social.
We'll engage more with our people that are following us if we do that.
Yes.
I think it's interesting to point out on page 97, he says, if there's anything that brands should take away from this book, it's that there's no central hub anymore. And really, he's talking about the website. Consumers are going to be coming through all kinds of portals, and forcing them to enter through the same door every time is going to make them tire of you.
That's a good lesson.
I know, because we need to have our website. Like, that's important. And I think it's important to have our content there, since like that's the only place that we control. But then I think it's also important then too to think about it this way. It has to work together. People don't always want to leave the platform they're on to go to your website. So you have to give them content. Like on Instagram, put the recipe in the caption, like, copy it from your computer, text it to yourself or whatever, so you can just copy and paste. But I mean, I loved the person who did that when she had this recipe. I found myself screenshotting it, and I was like, that was brilliant, because watch the behaviors that you're doing when people give you a lot of value, and then like that's what we replicate. So I really like that people are coming through, and that was in the Twitter chapter.
Okay. He says at the end of the Twitter chapter, it's the hashtag unique and memorable. But, we've kind of talked about it. You can have more than one hashtag with Twitter, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So that's how you can make one unique and memorable that for us, and yet include a second one that might be more the trending, more already used, correct?
Yeah. And I will say too, on Twitter, he says that he does a lot of research on social media when he goes and speaks at keynotes and places or talking to people. And he'll, like, even when they call in on a show, he'll go to their whatever platform they're talking about. And he said he judges people's Twitter on how many replies they have. And he talks about this on page 108. Twitter's not a one-way conversation. So if you're just tweeting and you're not replying or have any like responding to anybody, he's like, that's a fail. And so when I heard that, I went to mine to see how mine was, and it was all just one way because nobody was talking to me. And I thought, well, then I need to change that. Obviously, my content's not getting anybody to start a conversation, which is what Twitter's all about. So actually, that one thing alone made me rethink how I'm doing Twitter. And I'm not great at it yet because I have a lot of content going out that I don't reply to all the time. But I'm really trying to do better. And that's the thing, too. Like, I might spend 10 minutes replying then, or if I'm going to bulk time, 5 to 10 minutes, just getting some replies out there so that my Twitter feed looks balanced.
Yeah, right.
Becoming human.
Right. Becoming human. Maybe that's probably one of the key things. Bethany, we got about 5 minutes.
No.
What one or two things do you want to emphasize about this book before we wrap up? It's got a chapter on Pinterest.
Yes.
And an Instagram. And we've spent a lot of time here in that. Tumblr. I was surprised Tumblr is in here. That is a medium I don't use.
I didn't know it.
I don't use it either, but it's like huge with the younger generation. Like if you're trying to get the younger ones, Snapchat, which it's hard to get discoverability on Snapchat still, but Tumblr is huge. But I think you really have to understand how that platform is used. Like if you're gonna spend the time there, like figure it out and start playing with it. But that's definitely a younger platform.
Right. He doesn't spend a lot of time on LinkedIn or Google Plus. I know that he mentions those in the back.
He is now. So
He
actually,
is in the new book.
So now, he's
asked that. Does he still mention Tumblr in the new book? Is that still current?
I'll check. And I know this just because I listened to his podcast. He is talking about how he's learning to create, not learning, but he's having to repurpose content on LinkedIn because it's he calls it middle-aged men, businessmen, and what they have time for and what they don't have time for in terms of content that's being posted. And so like he just documents his life, which is what he tells us to do with all of our stuff. And so as he's like now, gonna crush it over on LinkedIn, he's just sharing the tips and things that he's finding. Let me see if he's got LinkedIn in here.
He doesn't talk about Tumblr and crushing it.
No. He doesn't have
a chapter.
But I know that's one that he is working on now.
It's interesting. And LinkedIn, is there another one that he emphasizes at all for us to be as current as possible? Everything I've read too, LinkedIn is growing, depending on the audience, but it's a growing one. But we
get a lot of work from LinkedIn, Michelle, for our business. Like LinkedIn we're paying more attention there too. Video and audio. If you listen to him, he is all about audio right now, especially with Alexa voice. He's telling everybody to figure out how to do an Alexa skill so that you can be part of the briefings. So like, Alexa, give me my briefings. Well, you can create a skill. I need to figure this out. He's been saying it for 2 to 3 years and he's like, I'm telling you all to do this and you're not going to do it. This is what you need to be doing. is figuring out audio, because you can do more when you're listening than when you're watching. And that's, I mean, the statistics are proving that. So his thing right now is video and audio, especially audio, anything audio.
And that. And I'm just going to say, as we wrap up here, even his notes were interesting. A lot of times people's footnotes, but right at the tail end, he gives a lot of the statistics and stuff where he got the information of, or links. He even has, hey, since you're an explorer, you found my little Easter egg. He has that tucked in there. Feel free to email me and he gives that with any questions or thoughts about this book. Include the word Easter eggs so I know who you are. So isn't that cute? He tucked a little note for people that read notes. Anyway, I thought that was clever. I thought it was a marketing. It made me feel like I could write him. And there's back to human again, isn't it?
Oh, he's very real. That's one reason I love him so much. He's
very real.
So real.
Any last minute comments, Bethany, as we wrap these up, or those of you that are with us or in the chat room, a summary?
My last thing is that he says several times throughout all of his books, including here at the very end, page 178 to 179, talks about effort and how most people aren't going to win at this because they won't spend the time to actually learn the platform and then create content for the platform. And so, like, I'm pretty competitive, so I was like, good, because I will, right? And so, I don't know, like, I think that's important to say, like, you really have, I think writers really have, especially with all the writers conferences we're doing, we try to tell people for this from the beginning to help them not feel overwhelmed. So this is not meant to overwhelm, but you really have to decide what your path is in your writing journey. Like, are you going to go like hardcore career, or is this going to be something where, again, it might be smaller, but I'm okay with that, meaning you don't have to, you're not going to drive the effort. You got to kind of pick which one you want to do. And if you're going to go all in, then I say read everything by him and then spend the time there. And if you're like, I don't want to go all in and all that, then that's okay. Then just pick the ones that are really going to be working for you and focus just specifically on those. So that's my now 2 pieces of advice, because I know I can get intense with that. But
yeah,
just
kind
pick
of
what you want to do.
a career versus a hobby.
Yeah, and some people are like, oh, but it's more than a hobby. But like when I say, yeah, exactly. When I say career, like, are you willing to do what it takes? Like, are you going to put the time in, the energy to learn I think it's more about learning your audience than anything. That's what the book sales are going to come if your audience, if you know your audience. And I think that comes from social media. And we get to, I don't know, people, my last soapbox, then I'll step off, is people talk about wanting to get the book sold and it has to go to a traditional publisher. And I think you can create content, whatever's on your heart for that book, you can put it on social media right now. Like, there's nothing stopping you from sharing that. But it's like, we get so like glassy eyed with the book that becomes the thing when it should be about the content. And so I think when we have that shift, social media changes a little bit. It can be more fun and how you take breaks and stuff. Done.
But it also, your seasonal life as a writer. Now I'm going to pick on Rhonda here. She just went through a season where she was caring for her mom, a lot of caregiving and stuff, where a year from now, she might be at a totally other different place to spend the effort.
Exactly.
She hasn't had the time and the energy of it. I'm going to school right now. I don't have the time and energy to do this.
Yep.
That I may focus on one and do one right. And I kind of like what Rachel was saying in the what's our purpose too. And her purpose is present on Twitter as an opportunity to minister to the gospel and encourage others. So it's a combination of things on that, to know where are you called for at this particular time, both career and family. And
yes.
As a writer, and then start from that point on.
Yes. And give yourself a break in those moments. And I think really, sometimes when I hear complaints from people, it's because they don't want to put the time in, but they want the career benefits without the time. And I don't think that happens. So I think you have to be able to give yourself a break, know what you want to do. And then, but if you're going to go for it, like, you will see results, like where you spend your time, you'll see the growth. And not be afraid of Facebook ads. We're not talking about that in here. I think we're going to try to get Kyle on to talk about that, but we use Facebook ads a lot and they work, and you have to test them, and don't be afraid of them.
Let's do that. Let's put that down. Melissa, why don't you write that down for us so we can get Kyle scheduled to come on and talk about it.
He has a class on it on the Academy. It's great.
Okay. And because there's been some updates too on that. So we want to update. Speaking of that, his cohort in crime, Cody, Moorhead is our next guest next week, talking about how to create compelling book covers. I think that'll be a really good topic. So we're excited to have Cody back with us. We haven't had him on for a little bit, so that'll be great. So that's our topic this week. Bethany, thank you for leading us in this conversation. Wonderful interactions today, questions, and I hope if you haven't read the book, help people pick up the book and all that. And we will have everybody in for the after party here in a minute, but we'll let Bethany kind of take us off the recording. Yeah. Thank you for being with us today, everybody. And we hope you enjoyed the replay. And those that are with us, we're so glad you're with us. And see you next week for next week's Writers Chat. Bye now.